Part 1. Jesus and the Divine War, the beginning of the rebellion. Have you ever wondered, while Lucifer rebelled against God, where was Jesus? The answer may completely change the way you understand the greatest cosmic battle ever fought. Once upon a time, when the universe was still dark and void, before the stars were born in the sky, Jesus existed, sharing perfect glory with God the Father. The two were inseparable, creating everything together, from the farthest stars to the most magnificent angels. In the heavenly courts, one angel, shining like the sun, was created to stand before God's throne. This angel was Lucifer, the most beautiful and perfect angel of all. Lucifer, one of the most perfect creations of Jesus, not only had unparalleled beauty, but also possessed supreme wisdom, a wisdom birthed from the very words of Jesus. In every detail, in every aspect of his being, Jesus had crafted Lucifer perfectly, a masterpiece meant to shield God's throne. But what went wrong? How did a perfect being, one of the highest angels in heaven, become the greatest adversary of God? It all began with a thought, an evil idea planted in Lucifer's heart. Why can't I be like God? Why must I bow to the Creator? These thoughts led to a catastrophic rebellion, the first battle in the history of the universe. From an angel close to the throne, Lucifer decided to oppose God, seeking the glory that only God deserved. But the question remains, where was Jesus during this cosmic war? Did he take part in the battle, wielding weapons against his enemy? The answer is not as simple as we might think. Jesus did not appear with a sword, nor did he rush into battle with the faithful angels. Jesus did not need to fight in the way we imagine. He is the Creator, and his power had been sustaining the universe even before the sun and the moon existed. In truth, Jesus remained exactly where he has always been, on his throne. He wasn't a passive observer. He was the sustainer of everything, keeping the universe in place through his divine authority. Even as the battle raged and the heavenly realms were divided, he remained steadfast on his throne, maintaining order in the cosmos. His presence was not passive but powerful, keeping everything functioning as it should, even in the midst of chaos and rebellion. That is why when Jesus said, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven," this statement is not just a casual observation. It is a declaration from the one who witnessed the fall of Lucifer. This was not a metaphor. It was a divine confirmation, a statement from the one who saw the first betrayal and the first rebellion in heaven. Why did Jesus allow the rebellion to happen? Why didn't he stop Lucifer right when these thoughts began to form in his heart? The answer lies in something much deeper than we can imagine. It is because of the gift of free will that Jesus gave to all of his creations, including Lucifer. He did not create robots who would be programmed to worship him. He created intelligent beings capable of true love, and therefore capable of rejecting that love. So when Lucifer, in his perfect creation, first chose to rebel, Jesus allowed it to unfold. But why? Because there was a greater plan at work, a plan that would involve not only the angelic rebellion, but the creation of mankind, the fall of Eden, and the very incarnation of the Son to redeem what had been lost. Lucifer was created with free will, the ability to choose between good and evil, between submission and rebellion. Jesus didn't create beings without the ability to choose. He created them to love genuinely, and love requires the freedom to choose. Do you feel that the events happening in your life aren't just random? Can you see that the freedom of choice is not only a gift, but also the greatest challenge in life? Jesus saw everything, even before the war began. But he didn't act in the way we think. He created, he sustained, and he allowed it all to happen for a reason. A reason that, once we understand it, will completely change the way we view his great victory. Part 2. The Fall of Lucifer, the Unraveling of a Masterpiece. How could the most perfect creation fall so far? The answer is more than just a story of rebellion. It's the tragic unraveling of a once glorious being who, despite being created with absolute perfection, chose the path of destruction. What does this tell us about the nature of sin and the choices we all face? Lucifer, the once glorious cherub, had been created as the most beautiful and wise being in existence. His perfection was unparalleled. As Ezekiel describes, he was adorned with precious stones, sardius, topaz, diamond, and emerald. His body was covered in the finest gold. He was the very definition of divine beauty. And yet, this flawless being began to turn away from his Creator. But how? What led to his downfall? It all began with the seed of pride, a thought that would grow like a poison in his heart. Lucifer, with all his beauty and wisdom, began to think, "Why should I bow before God? Why should I serve? If I am so magnificent, shouldn't I be equal to the Creator?" These thoughts, though subtle at first, began to spiral into something much darker. Pride took root where humility had once lived, and Lucifer's desire for power, control, and equality with God began to fester. The beauty of Lucifer's creation was not in his appearance alone, but in his unique role within the heavenly courts. He was the anointed cherub who covers. Ezekiel 28-14, meaning he was placed in the highest position, directly before God's throne, covering the divine presence with his wings. He was, in essence, the keeper of the holiness of God's throne. But as his pride grew, so did his discontent with his position. He began to question why he should serve God, and soon he desired to be like God. His desire was not just to be like God in wisdom or power, but to usurp God entirely, to take his throne and rule in his place. Lucifer's rebellion was not an impulsive act, but the culmination of a long process of self-deception. He had the free will to choose, just as every created being does, and with that freedom came the responsibility of his choices. The tragic reality is that Lucifer, despite being given all the privileges of a perfect creation, chose to abandon his rightful place and defy the Creator. He chose to rebel against the one who gave him life, beauty, and wisdom. Have you ever felt like your success, your achievements, or your talents weren't enough? Have you ever struggled with pride or discontent, feeling like you deserve more than what you've been given? Lucifer's story warns us of the dangers of this mindset, the same mindset that led the most perfect creation to lose everything. When Lucifer first entertained these thoughts, it was not with the intention of full-blown rebellion. No, it was far more subtle. It started with a simple thought of dissatisfaction, a feeling that he deserved more, that he should be greater than what he was. As this discontent grew, so did his ambition. Lucifer began to speak these thoughts to others, planting seeds of doubt in the hearts of other angels. He seduced them with promises of freedom, power, and a world where they were not subject to the will of the Creator. One by one, these angels began to follow Lucifer's lead, and soon, a third of the heavenly hosts were swayed by his rebellion. But what did Jesus do during all of this? He saw everything. He saw the seeds of rebellion growing in Lucifer's heart, and knew the devastating consequences that would follow. Yet he did not intervene, not because he was powerless, but because he knew that this was part of the eternal plan. Jesus, being the Creator, understood that Lucifer's rebellion, though painful, would ultimately reveal something crucial about the nature of love, free will, and the destructive power of sin. This battle between good and evil, between Creator and creature, had to unfold. God gave Lucifer the choice to love and serve him freely, but Lucifer chose to reject that love, to seek power, and to exalt himself above all else. This was not a mistake or an accident. Jesus allowed Lucifer's rebellion to unfold because he knew that only through the free will of his creatures could true love exist. And only by allowing this rebellion to take place could the depth of God's love and the consequences of rejecting him be fully realized. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to make a choice, knowing that the wrong decision could lead to destruction, but still choosing it anyway? Lucifer made that choice, and now the entire universe must bear witness to the consequences of rejecting divine love. But there's more to this story than just the fall. There's a redemption waiting on the other side. As Lucifer's rebellion took shape, it became clear that the perfection of God's creation was at risk. The very fabric of heaven was being torn apart by the growing conflict. And while the angels prepared for battle, Jesus, the Creator, watched and sustained everything. He did not rush to take up arms against his creation, because he understood that this cosmic battle would reveal the true nature of his love, justice, and mercy. The rebellion in heaven was not just about power or control. It was about the very essence of love. Lucifer wanted to be like God, but the nature of God is not self-exaltation. God is love, and love is not about demanding worship. It is about offering it freely. Lucifer's desire to be equal with God revealed the core of sin, self-centeredness, pride, and the rejection of God's perfect plan. The battle that was about to unfold in heaven would be one that would not only determine the fate of the angels, but would also set the stage for the greatest demonstration of love the universe had ever seen. For it was in this rebellion, in this cosmic war, that Jesus would reveal his true purpose, not to destroy, but. Part 3. The cosmic battle, Jesus, the sustainer of all. When the war in heaven broke out, Jesus didn't take up arms. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He sustained the universe itself. But what does it mean that the Creator didn't intervene directly in the cosmic battle? The answer will change how you understand the true nature of divine authority, love, and the struggle between good and evil. The rebellion of Lucifer wasn't a simple act of defiance. It wasn't just a fight for power, nor a petty struggle over who would be the greatest. It was the beginning of a battle that would shake the very foundations of the universe, a cosmic war between the Creator and his most perfect creation. Lucifer had led a third of the heavenly host in rebellion against God, and now the very harmony of the heavens was at risk. But as this conflict unfolded, Jesus remained on his throne. He didn't rush into battle. He didn't draw a sword. Instead, he did what only he could do. He sustained the entire universe. While angels fought in heaven, swords clashing and battle cries filling the air, Jesus remained calm, seated on the throne of the universe, holding everything together with the power of his word. The stars continued to shine. The planets remained in their orbits. The entire cosmos didn't fall into chaos, even though heaven itself was being torn apart by rebellion. And why? Because Jesus, through his divine authority, was sustaining all things, even in the midst of war. The words of Hebrews 1-3 tell us, "The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word." This wasn't just a passive observation. Jesus was not a detached ruler watching from afar. He was, and still is, the very force that holds the universe in existence. In the middle of the most intense battle the world had ever seen, Jesus was not idle. He was actively upholding the very fabric of reality. This truth is incredibly important. It reveals that Jesus' authority over creation is not merely about power. It's about the sustaining love that keeps everything in motion. While Lucifer fought with angelic strength, Jesus fought with divine authority. He didn't need to pick up a sword. His presence was the sword. His word was the weapon. The Creator, the sustainer of all things, watched as his most beautiful creation, Lucifer, tore himself apart, but Jesus never wavered. He remained on the throne, and through his sustaining power, he was showing the universe that the battle wasn't won by force, but by authority, by love, and by the power to keep existence intact. In a world filled with conflict and chaos, we often feel powerless. But what if the greatest battle was not won through our strength, but through our ability to remain steadfast in love, in peace, and in trust? Jesus didn't need to fight in the traditional sense. He proved that sometimes the greatest power is in sustaining what we've been given, even when everything around us is falling apart. Lucifer, in his rebellion, thought he could defeat the Creator. He believed that by rallying his followers, by challenging God's authority, he could claim victory. But what Lucifer didn't understand was that he wasn't just fighting against a stronger opponent. He was fighting against the very force that held his existence together. Every move Lucifer made was made possible only because Jesus allowed it to happen. The rebellion, the pride, the fall, they were all happening in the universe that Jesus sustained with his word. He allowed it because he knew the end from the beginning. And in his wisdom, he knew that the rebellion would eventually show the contrast between the self-destructive nature of pride and the life-giving nature of love. This is where we find the true power of Jesus. It wasn't in the battle fought with swords and shields. It was in his ability to let the rebellion unfold and still keep everything intact. Heaven may have been divided, but the universe continued to function because of Jesus' sustaining power. The laws of physics, the rotation of the planets, the movement of the stars all continued as normal. This was no ordinary peace. It was peace sustained by the Creator himself, a peace that transcended all conflict. Even as Lucifer and his angels fought, Jesus allowed them to make their choices, to live with the consequences of their actions, because he knew that the outcome of this war would reveal something far greater than a mere victory over a rebel. It would reveal the heart of God. It would show the universe the true nature of his justice and mercy, and it would prepare the way for a much greater battle, the battle for humanity's redemption. What if the greatest act of power in your life isn't fighting against the storm, but holding on to your peace in the midst of it? Jesus proved that the greatest authority comes not from dominating others, but from holding everything together when it feels like it's falling apart. The cosmic battle didn't end with Lucifer's rebellion. It was only just beginning. The war in heaven was a prelude to the real struggle, the struggle that would happen on earth. And it was in this earthly battle that Jesus would reveal the ultimate truth of his nature, not as a warrior wielding a sword, but as the Lamb who would sacrifice everything for the redemption of creation. As Jesus sat on the throne during the rebellion, he wasn't merely waiting for the war to end. He was orchestrating something much greater. The expulsion of Lucifer from heaven was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning. And the redemption of mankind, which would take place on the cross, was the next chapter in God's grand narrative of love, grace, and restoration. Sometimes, when we face the greatest battles in our lives, we feel alone. But what if Jesus is not absent in our struggles? What if, just like during the cosmic war, he is right there, sustaining us, even when we can't see it? Jesus' role in the cosmic battle was not to fight in the way we would expect. It was to sustain, to uphold, and to keep everything intact until the time was right for his ultimate victory. This is the nature of divine authority. Jesus doesn't just wield power. He sustains life. He sustains creation. And he will continue to sustain us through every battle we face. In the next part, we will see how Jesus' sustaining power led to the final victory over Lucifer, not through destruction, but through the ultimate act of sacrifice. This is where the cosmic battle takes a deeper turn, revealing the true nature of God's plan for redemption and restoration. Part 4. The ultimate victory, Jesus' plan for redemption in the midst of all the chaos. When Lucifer thought he had won, Jesus had already planned a victory that would change everything. It was a victory not through violence or force, but through something much more powerful, the sacrifice of love. What if the true battle wasn't won in the way we think, but in the most unexpected of ways? As the cosmic battle in heaven raged on, it became clear that the forces of evil, led by Lucifer, were not going to give up without a fight. Lucifer had seduced a third of the angels to join his rebellion, and the war was escalating into a devastating confrontation. But in the midst of this warfare, Jesus, the Creator and Sustainer, had already charted out the true path to victory, path that would not be found in the chaos of battle, but in the ultimate act of sacrifice. Jesus' plan was never one of retaliation, never one of destruction, but of redemption. When we think of victory, we often think of power and might, of armies clashing, of weapons drawn, and of decisive battles that end with one side prevailing over the other. But the victory that Jesus had in mind was of a completely different nature. While Lucifer and his followers fought with all their strength, hoping to seize the throne and overtake the Creator, Jesus knew that the true way to victory lay not in overpowering force, but in perfect submission, in love, and in sacrifice. What if the greatest power is not in the strength to destroy, but in the strength to love even your enemies? Jesus' victory over Lucifer was never about fighting for supremacy. It was about showing the universe that love is the greatest power of all. From the very beginning, Jesus understood that this cosmic war was not just about angels and rebellion. It was about something much greater. It was about the fate of all creation, and ultimately, it was about redemption. Satan's rebellion was not an unexpected turn of events. Jesus knew it would happen because he had given Lucifer the free will to choose. He also knew that Lucifer's fall would be the prelude to the greatest story of redemption the world would ever know. And so, while the battle in heaven continued, while angels fought and the universe trembled, Jesus was already planning for the moment when he would step into human history to redeem what was lost. The war in heaven, the rebellion of Lucifer, and the expulsion of the fallen angels were just the beginning. The true battle would take place on earth, and the weapon that Jesus would use to defeat Lucifer and his followers was not a sword or a shield, but his own life, a sacrifice that would forever change the fate of humanity and the cosmos itself. The cosmic war was not an isolated event. It was a glimpse into the larger conflict that would unfold on earth. Lucifer's rebellion was the beginning, but Jesus' victory on the cross would be the ultimate end. When Jesus died on the cross, he did not only defeat Lucifer's rebellion in heaven, but he also provided a way for humanity to be restored to God. Jesus' sacrifice was the key to unlocking the door of redemption for all of creation. It was the price that had to be paid to restore the balance that had been disrupted by Lucifer's pride and rebellion. Have you ever wondered why a sacrifice was necessary for redemption? The answer is profound. Because sin, the rebellion against the Creator, creates a fracture in the universe itself. Only through the most powerful act of love sacrifice could that fracture be healed. Jesus' death was not just a moment in history. It was the cosmic event that healed the very fabric of reality. Jesus' death on the cross was the culmination of God's eternal plan for redemption. It was the moment when love triumphed over pride, when humility conquered ambition, and when grace defeated rebellion. Satan had thought he could defeat God by turning his creation against him, but in reality, he was merely setting the stage for the greatest demonstration of God's love the world would ever know. The irony is undeniable. Satan had rebelled against God because he desired to be worshipped and to take God's place. But instead of God retaliating with destruction, he responded with grace. Instead of annihilating his adversary immediately, he allowed Satan's rebellion to play out, knowing that through it, he would ultimately provide a way for all creation to be redeemed, through his sacrifice on the cross. Jesus defeated Satan in the most powerful way possible, not by destroying him, but by offering forgiveness. He gave up his own life, taking on the punishment for sin that humanity deserved, so that those who believe in him could be reconciled with God. Satan's greatest weapon, sin, was now defeated by Jesus' greatest act of love. What if the greatest enemy you face in life isn't external, but internal? What if the battles you fight are won not by overpowering forces, but by surrendering to love and grace? Jesus' victory on the cross teaches us that true power lies in sacrificial love, not in the strength to conquer, but in the ability to heal and restore. The cross was not just a place of defeat. It was a place of ultimate victory. When Jesus died, he not only defeated Satan, but he also provided a way for all of humanity to be restored. He bridged the gap between God and man, offering forgiveness to all who would accept it. This was the victory that Satan never saw coming. Lucifer had hoped to destroy God's creation, but instead, Jesus used that very act of rebellion to bring about the redemption of the world. And even now, as we look back at the cosmic battle that began in heaven and continued on earth, we see that the real victory was not won by the sword, but by the cross. Satan had hoped to destroy creation by drawing others into rebellion, but Jesus, through his death and resurrection, overcame the forces of evil forever. The battle was won, not by force, but by sacrificial love. What if the most unexpected victory in your life is waiting to be won through surrender? What if the key to your freedom and peace is found not in fighting, but in trusting the power of love and sacrifice? The cross of Jesus was the ultimate victory, and it's available to you today. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the implications of this victory, how it was not just for the angels or for humanity, but for the entire cosmos. The restoration of all things was set into motion by the sacrifice of Jesus, and the final defeat of Satan is not yet realized, but it is already guaranteed through the cross. A final victory is on the horizon, and it will be more glorious than we can imagine. Part 5. The final victory, Jesus' ultimate triumph over evil. You've seen the cosmic war, the rebellion, and the sacrifice. But what happens after the battle is won? The ultimate victory doesn't end with the cross. It leads to the restoration of all things. The defeat of Satan is inevitable, and the true glory of Jesus' victory will be revealed in ways that transcend time and space. Are you ready to see what happens next? The cosmic war between good and evil began in heaven and reached its climax on earth at the cross. Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, allowed Satan's rebellion to unfold, knowing that it would set the stage for a greater victory, the defeat of death itself. When Jesus died and rose again, he broke the power of sin and death. He demonstrated that evil would not have the final word. The battle that began in heaven had a conclusion, and it wasn't in some distant future. It began with Jesus' resurrection, and it continues today. That the defeat of Satan at the cross was not just a singular event in history. It was the beginning of an ongoing process. Satan, in his rebellion, had thought he could overthrow the Creator. But what he failed to realize was that his actions, no matter how destructive, were part of a grander plan. Through Jesus' sacrifice, not only was humanity given a path to redemption, but the entire created order was set on a trajectory toward its final restoration. The death of Jesus didn't just guarantee salvation for individuals. It began the restoration of the entire cosmos. What if the defeat of evil isn't just about the end of the battle, but the beginning of something greater? What if Jesus' victory is setting the stage for a new world, one that's free from suffering, sin, and death? This is the hope that the resurrection brings. In Colossians 1:19-20. Paul writes, "For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross." The victory of Jesus was not just for humanity, it was for all of creation. The cross initiated the process of reconciliation, bringing peace between the Creator and his creation. This peace is not just a temporary resolution, but a permanent restoration. It is the hope of a new heaven and a new earth, where evil, suffering, and death will no longer have any place. The final defeat of Satan will not happen in a distant, uncertain future. It has already begun. The process of the restoration of all things started with Jesus' resurrection. His victory over death ensures that Satan's ultimate defeat is certain. The cross, as the decisive moment of victory, was not the end, it was the beginning of the end for Satan's rule. Satan may still be active in the world today, but his defeat is guaranteed. He is already a defeated enemy, and his ultimate judgment is inevitable. What if the struggles you face today are not the final chapter of your story, but a moment in the greater story of restoration? Jesus' victory doesn't just promise eternal life, it promises a new world, one where everything is made right. The ultimate defeat of Satan will come when he is cast into the lake of fire. As described in Revelation 20:10, this final judgment will mark the end of his reign of terror and the beginning of a new era of peace. But even now, as Satan fights his last battles, the victory of Jesus is already assured. The final chapter of this cosmic drama has already been written, and Jesus holds the victory. But what about us? What does this victory mean for our lives today? It means that we are not fighting a losing battle. The victory has already been won by Jesus, and our role is to live in the light of that victory. Jesus' resurrection is the ultimate assurance that evil will not have the final word. As believers, we are called to live in the freedom that Jesus' victory provides. The power of sin and death has been broken, and we can live in the hope of the coming restoration of all things. Are you living as though victory has already been won? What if your life today is a reflection of the eternal hope that Jesus has already secured? Your struggles, your pain, your battles, they are not the end of the story. The victory is already secured, and your future is bright as we reflect on the cosmic battle that unfolded in heaven and on earth. We can see that the ultimate victory was not won through force, but through love. Jesus demonstrated that true power lies not in conquering others, but in self-sacrifice, in the willingness to lay down his life for the sake of others. His victory over Satan, sin, and death is the ultimate act of love, and it is through this love that all things will be restored. The final victory of Jesus over Satan isn't just about defeating evil, it's about restoring everything that was lost. What if the greatest victory of all is the one where everything is made new, where God's love reigns supreme, and where we, as his creation, are fully reconciled to him? The future of the universe, the future of humanity, is not in the hands of Satan or any evil force, it is in the hands of Jesus. He is the one who holds the keys to death and hell. Revelation 1:18. His victory ensures that evil will not last forever, and it guarantees that God's perfect plan for creation will be fulfilled. The coming restoration of all things is not a distant dream. It is a certain reality. The victory of Jesus is not just something to look forward to in the future. It's something that changes everything today. The cross has already won the battle, and the final restoration is on its way. Are you ready to live in the light of this victory? As we look to the future, let us remember that the ultimate victory has already been secured. Satan's defeat is certain, and the restoration of all things is inevitable. This is the hope we live with, the hope that one day God will make all things new. Until that day comes, we can live with the assurance that Jesus' victory is our victory. The cosmic battle is over, and the eternal triumph of love has already begun. Let us live in the freedom that comes with this victory, knowing that no matter what battles we face, we are fighting from a place of triumph. Jesus has already won, and that victory is ours to claim. The final victory is on the horizon, and it will be greater than we could imagine. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. If this message has touched your heart, share it with others who need to know that the battle has already been won. Join us in celebrating the victory of Jesus and live in the hope of the restoration that is coming. Like, comment, and share to spread the message of hope and victory.